like to open up the Baldwin Park City Council special meeting. Today is October the 2nd, 2019. The time is it's not even 5:30 yet. Let's wait. We'll wait.
Sure, Manny has something to say.
Manny, do you want to say anything?
He's always a talker. He's always a talker. He's always more.
He's decorated the council chambers with red, white, and blue balloons for the census.
For the census.
Are you taking volunteers for the census, Manny?
Yes, we are. We're going to have a complete count committee, and Alan's going to talk about that at the council meeting.
Okay.
But since I do have the floor, I want to remind everyone, we do have the senior prom coming up a week from this Friday, October 11th. So if you have time,
Thank you.
drop by.
So count me in for the census count.
And then-
I did it last
10
years ago.
And tomorrow we have the highlight of the year, the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, at the Arc with mariachis and all kinds of goodies.
What time does that start?
5 p.m.
That's okay.
And performance is at 6 p.m. and it promises to be a very nice.
Oh, I'll make it on time then. I'll get up at 5:45. So. How are you, Mr. Lee?
You gotta be at both.
On the hook?
Yeah, don't forget to send some. That's like
Yes.
Huh? Oh, I feel like that when I'm every day about 2 o'clock.
I know.
Yeah.
All right, this one I'd like to open at the Baldwin Park City Council special meeting. It's October 2nd, 2019. The time is 5:30. So at this point, I will have the city clerk take roll call.
Thank you. Councilmember Ricardo Pacheco.
She'll be with us shortly.
Councilmember Paul Hernandez.
Present.
Councilmember Alejandra Avila.
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Monica Garcia.
She should be with us very shortly.
And Mayor Manuel Lozano.
Present. All right, thank you very much. All right, so at this point, I'd like to open up the public communication, so anyone wishing to speak? Oh, Ben? Oh, I thought you were going to, okay. All right, so at this point, we'll go ahead and cover the, oh, hold on, it's Ricardo. Hold on. Bro, where are you?
He's calling man.
Yes, sir.
Solid committee.
At all? Oh, man, okay, all right. All right, Ben. Okay, all right. We are just three of us right now, just Alejandra and Paul and I. All right. Yes, should be, hopefully, yes. All right. My brother, take care. Good one. Bye-bye. Okay, I'm going to make a motion for Councilman Ricardo Pacheco's not feeling good, didn't recognize his voice. So at this point, I'm to excuse him. That's my motion.
Second.
Any objections? See none. So, all right. So at this point, we'll go over to the open session studies, which we have the payment on Pacific presentation, also the public art presentation. Then we'll recess over to closed session for property negotiating government code 54956.8. All right. At this point, who has first? Sam. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, and good evening, council members. So yeah, we put together 2 short presentations to talk to you about. Firstly, we're going to talk about the Main Avenue paving and complete streets project. It's part of our Main Avenue and Pacific Avenue corridor project. And then after this presentation, we have another presentation with the public artist to bring back those more options as we spoke about in the last meeting. So this is just an update to our Pacific Avenue and Main Avenue project. I'd like to invite Steve Forster and Kevin Roque. These folks are our fine engineers working on this project. They've been working really hard on getting this project through, so I'd like to give it up to them.
All righty. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, senior staff. Thank you for entertaining us tonight and giving you an update on the Main Avenue and Pacific Avenue Complete Streets project. So we're going to go through a little bit of what we've engineered here, where we're at, where we're going, and how the project was funded, and the overall project schedule for you tonight. So the first phase of this project has already been completed. So that is indicated in the red in the middle of that process. What we're going to be talking to you tonight about is more specific, or what we're working on right now, I should say, to correct myself, is Phase 1B is in plan check and final design, and we'll be back to the council as early as next month. Mm-hmm. So you'll see the Phase B portion then ultimately go out to bid and then be constructed during 2020. So what we're going to be talking to you tonight about is the plans that we've developed for Phase 2, Los Angeles Street to the South City limit. So this is a typical section. This is an artist rendering of what you'll be looking at when we, actually go into construction. So starting in the center of the street, if you're coming from Covina, you would see an entryway monument sign at that particular location to be determined by the council and some other renderings to come forth for final approval yet, but just for architectural sense, that's what's in there today. Then we're going to have one lane of travel in each direction, and then that will be kind of bifurcated by a bike lane and overall then a parking lane for people to get out of their cars and utilize the space beyond. So the typical layout right now is 4 through lanes of traffic, 2 lanes of travel in each direction, and we'll be taking that down to 1 lane in each direction. Then we'll be adding pedestrians, amenities such as ADA ramps, walking paths, and then also dedicated bike lanes through this particular area. And we'll also be adding additional parking that does not exist now because of the configuration of the lanes does not allow for the overall lane width to accommodate on-street parking, hence there's a lot of red curving out there now. So we'll be actually increasing the net parking in that particular area. So as it is right now, it's not real pedestrian friendly. People don't want to ride their bikes out there. Cars are coming too close to them. Overall, the project design on the right will accommodate that and actually improve multimodal transportation, such as those pedestrian and bike lanes out there. So this is kind of a typical layout, and I'm going to let my engineer, Kevin Roque, go kind of through some of the physical design of what's going on out here and show the differences in how some of this is actually taking place. So with that, Kevin?
So there are 2 options for the proposed striping layout. The first option shows the bike lane closer towards the driving lane here, and the parking adjacent to the curb. The second option is with the bike lane adjacent to the curb and the parking adjacent to the driving lane. On the westerly side here, you can see that it's essentially the same layout, and that's because there's existing parking stalls that are already present. And in order to remove those, it's going to be very costly. So for right now, we have these 2 options to choose from.
So at the last look at this, the council had given us direction on the upper diagram.
Yes.
But we just wanted to show the lower diagram as another option. It gives more of a protected bike lane, but we can move ahead with either one of these at your preference.
The one on the bottom with the protected bike lane, is there going to be a curb in between the cars that are parked and the bike lane itself, or no?
Yeah, so there could either be a curb that makes a physical separation, like you're indicating, or it could be striped, depending on the wishes of the city.
Ideally, I like the ones with the curb, with the physical space, because, I'll be guilty myself. Sometimes I'm not 100%, parking accurate. I don't have a Tesla yet, but soon. And people tend to, do that. I tend to like the bottom one more. My question is, or I could save it later, you can answer it later, is regarding the transition into West Covina.
Yes.
How do we transition from that? What does that look like?
So we have a taper that's calculated using our
Do you have
engineering
an image by any
standards.
chance?
I don't have it. I have a separate sheet that has that.
We do have the actual plans
Yeah,
that
we
show
can show you.
the taper in the transition area.
Yes.
That would then go into that, so we can certainly lay that out for you.
And what happens to the bike lane in that area? It's just phased out?
Yes, it
And
phases
then,
out.
Yes.
and we're going from one lane each way to 2 lanes each way,
Correct.
so the bikes will just have to then share the road in the number 2 lanes.
That's
So
correct.
We have what we call the sharrows. It's pretty much signage and striping, letting the bicyclists and the vehicles know that it's no longer a dedicated bike lane.
So the end result, I want to add that the end result will depend on, our conversations with West Covina. We're in conversations with them to see if they would allow us to make that transition in their side jurisdiction. And if they do, then that'll, add more bike lanes on our side. But we're still talking to them. We met with them this week, and
they're considering it.
Because the other safety aspect is, when you go from the 2 to the 1, how does that affect the flow of traffic and the speeding? Because I know generally when you go from 2 to 1, and then once you have, by lanes or sectional, people tend to slow down just mentally for whatever reason that does that.
You're absolutely correct. And in those particular areas, there's an engineered transition as well. And in fact, I think we've got it on some of the streets already out there to where there will be arrows and then a lane line configuration that will show the drop off. And then I don't think you've suggested changing the speed limit with the design standard of this, but by natural, what we call traffic calming measures, when you do take 2 lanes down to 1 and you put a bike lane or a parking lane adjacent to that, that does give a calming effect to kind of motorists, if you will, that then naturally do tend to slow down.
My other thing too is, what about for say fire engines and police, particularly fire engines?
Sure. So all of our designs accommodate what we call Class A vehicles, which are also including school buses for the turning radiuses and the movement. The pavement sections are designed to support those things, and all those sorts of activities. The one thing about, we were talking about the curb versus the striping and things like that. Sometimes it works to our advantage to not put a curb in there because that allows for cars to move to the right more with a little bit more ease, if you will, in the event of an emergency or an accident or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And so I have a question on the bottom one. How wide are the lanes, the bike lanes?
Bike lanes themselves are 5 feet wide.
And that was a question I had, a concern over having a divider or a sidewalk on there. Have you had other cities put their bike lanes that way, and how often do they have accidents because maybe they run into the curb or what have you?
Yeah, it's pretty much a standard for communities to put this in now. We have seen it in quite a few cities. Some of the more bike-friendly cities, such as Long Beach, for instance, has quite a bit of this going on. And instead of curbs, they typically use raised bollards, even for a separation of bike lane and sidewalk and the parking lanes through there. So that's another option as well. So they're a little bit more crash resistant, if you will, for people that can weave in with their bikes or back out of the lane, for cars to pull in. They don't hit the curb. They might hit a movable bollard and come back into the lanes and things like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I do agree with you, though. The top one does give you more room to move out of the way. We do have an emergency vehicle coming, so it would give us more space for that. So I prefer the top.
Any other questions?
So is it the
So
direction?
the top is what I think was the original direction, and
Right.
I'm scared that you want to stay with that.
I prefer
So this is the same, yeah, that's
in an
fine.
emergency,
Yeah.
then we can have cars move out of the way.
Yeah. So it'd be similar to what we have now, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have a problem.
So just so you know, there were some claims on what we built on the north end that the fire department couldn't negotiate those, and I did talk to the assistant chief, myself, and the captain at the station. They said they have absolutely no problem.
Oh, wow.
And the school buses as well, right? You
Right.
talked to
So
the district as well.
we talked to the school had the same similar concerns, so we talked to them.
So are they having to reroute themselves, the school buses?
Not all of them. There's some that did reroute, but not all of them have
And
rerouted.
the fire department doesn't have to.
No? Okay, all right.
So I tend to like the bottom one only because again it provides protection for the commuter and cyclist. And given the way we use the street right now, maybe it's to use the bollards or the removable posts instead of a concrete piece. So Dr. say something has to move over, and or when we have our street festival stuff, they can be moved out to provide a little bit of additional space. So I like the bottom one for a couple things. As Councilmember Alejandra said, is it gives more space for individuals to move to the right if they need to. But considering there'll be cars that are parked there, we can do it that way. It still gives us that flexibility. Should Dr. say we look at this later.
Okay, all right, so at this point, which one are we looking at?
I would like to go with the top.
The top? And you?
The bottom.
Okay, so what's the difference here?
The difference is the bottom, they're gonna put a curb.
No. I said.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go through
Physically
it.
show them
Yeah,
the
show us the
separation.
bottom part.
So
Thank
you
you.
can see right here where the white ends, that's
They're
the,
gonna put
the
poles
curb
or
and gutter.
something.
Oh.
And then the bicycle
Okay.
lane is adjacent to the curb and gutter on this one, and on this one up top, there's a parking lane in between the curb and gutter and the bike lane. So it pretty much just switches the order of the bike lane and parking lane.
So
Yeah, so- and that's what
traditionally,
those
we're
are
not
the
a
ones-
Long Beach. We don't have as many people riding bicycles. I can understand we were Long Beach or because of the bike lane beach, but we're not. I just feel that the top works better for the city. And again, because it's becoming a 2-lane and there's no cars parked, we can move traffic over it need be versus the bottom where there's posts in the way.
So is the top identical to what we have now?
in essence.
It would be identical to what is farther north.
Yeah, it would
Yes.
continue what we've done so far and what we plan to do south.
Well, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
There are plastic curbs that are bolting down in the street. These are not. It's not a concrete fixture, so we could use those. Those have drainage holes to let the water go through,
So that could be used on the lower one.
So would you agree to the top one? Could put little flags for you to on the right and right.
I mean, both are a huge increase in safety for cyclists, either
Yeah.
one over what we
I think we just continue, the top just continues with the vision that we've had, so what we're working with.
And I'll tell you, at first it was like, whoa, I don't. We started seeing them, but it worked out. Everyone likes it.
And the only thing that I'll add is 29 years in working as a public works director and whatnot. On the lower one becomes a little bit of a maintenance issue for your public works staff for sweeping issues
Trash.
and things
Oh,
like that.
okay.
So, there's pros and cons to both sides, certainly.
Okay, all right.
We can go with the top one.
Okay.
All right, so this one, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this is just an example of a project that already completed. Main Avenue, of course, that's the phase 1A project that was done, and then just recently we completed Fraser Avenue. So this is what ultimately it'll end up looking like.
Very nice.
So diving into our cost estimate and project schedule, and the council should be commended for their actions along with the staff of Baldwin Park. You guys have done a great job in going out and get grant funding for this project. This project is fully grant funded, along with the one that was previously completed and the one to follow next month that'll come back before the council, and this project as well. Even leading up to this project, grant funds were secured in order to do the planning of these projects that then go into kind of the engineering phase that says this is a doable idea and you should go forward with that. So having said that, this is no general fund monies attached to these projects. This is all paid for out of grant funding opportunities that Sam has worked diligently on. So great job there. And construction cost on this is about $2.2 million. The kind of the key points that are probably most important to the council. Next steps is we need to take this project back to the California Transportation Commission for their authorization and funding allocation. They'll make that allocation probably by December, and they'll notify us. Then we can come back and return it to council with the final plans and specifications and authorization to go out to bid. We could have this project completely constructed as early as June of 2020.
Wow. So we're talking about all the way from the north down
Yeah,
south?
from Los Angeles all the way down to the West Covina City.
Quick question.
Oh, okay.
The transition right here on Ramona and Maine, how does that transition over with, say, the bike route park? If it's so narrow.
So we didn't show it here, we didn't highlight it here, but it is the same configuration that we
As the other?
as the other. Yes. So they don't have dedicated bike lanes.
Sam, so you said from Los Angeles south.
Yes.
Well, how about the north? When's that happening?
So the north,
From-
we're finalizing our constructability review and packaging it up to bring it back to the council next month for authorization to bid.
For bid.
Yeah,
That's
so
great.
it'll be into construction.
It'll be done first.
It'll be
wow.
done first.
Okay, good.
Early spring next
So
year.
we're hoping to be done in April with that.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Tax time area.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, thank you. Gentlemen. Thank you
Okay,
very
so
much.
moving on to our second presentation. I'd like to first ask, I think Helen wanted to say a few words about the public art and community component to it. And then we'd like to bring up the public artist. Alana?
Thank you, Helen.
Hi.
Hello.
No, please, sir.
I didn't get the blue memo, I'm sorry.
All right. So you
Look,
guys-
that's that nice picture. A photo. Isn't that nice? Yeah. I know. It's amazing. Good evening.
So, good.
All right. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. It's nice to see everyone. Glad you mentioned that you like this picture. So I actually work at the Arts Center, Arts and Recreation Center every day, and I get to spend some time in our museum often. So our past is very treasured in our community, but also it's what's taking us towards the future. So the past maybe 6 to 7 months I've been working closely with our artists because I do oversee our art exhibits and our cultural art experiences for our residents. So we've been working closely, and I just wanted to share with you a little bit about what we've done in the past few months with our community. So we've conducted some community outreach. We've actually went into the high schools and talked to art students in their art classes, some AP students and some students who are taking Art 1. And we were able to get feedback from them and exciting just input about the stories of our community, all the cultural ties that we have here. Of course, everyone kept referencing In and Out, which is a classic in our city, but also just the stories of their families and how everything in our community is so interwoven and just so vibrant and just full of life. So in doing that, we also did some outreach at Barnes Park. So we have our Movies on the Green in June, and we had a few public input meetings there as well. So residents were able to talk about what they enjoy in our community, what memories come up for them. And it was just a very exciting time to see all of our residents talk about what they would see and envision in an art piece and just the memories and the focal points that they see daily. So we do have a very exciting summer here every year. And one thing about our city is that we love to have a good time. So recently, this summer, we actually had our downtown street market with thousands of people at our events, very vibrant, very colorful, excitable times. And so we know that the downtown component is one of the key locations where people come together. So our residents like to gather together in our focal point of our community. So in ties with the downtown revitalization that's coming up, having a key public art piece that encompasses all those components is going to be wonderful for our residents and just enrich all the cultural art that we're trying to implement and make sure it's accessible to our residents. Some people don't see art as a big important piece of their lives, but art is for everyone. So it's just really exciting to see this. I wanted to share that with you that I'm very excited about this. I'm super excited about all the different options we have, but most importantly, that the rings are just my favorite piece because it's able to share a story. So that's just my personal thing, but just definitely wanted to make sure you heard of all the back work that we've done to get to this point with our art pieces this evening. So with that, we have Franca and Claudia here to share some more interesting information.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Council, Mayor. Thank you for having us tonight. So, as Helen already talked about, a really important piece about approaching this public art piece is community outreach, and so we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. We really recognize, yes, this is an identifier for the city, this marquee, but more importantly, it's really an identifier for the community who lives here. So, we also want to just briefly mention our presentation right now is focusing on the public art component. There will be the digital marquee message board kind of component as well in relation to the artwork, but maybe a bit more separate. So it's not represented in this presentation right now, but this is still a part of the project as well. We were also inspired by some historic photographs that we found. This is a 1913 photograph. The other one was 1929. So there was obviously a big important sign right at that location identifying the city in a way that was pretty forward-looking actually for the time with light bulbs and everything. So also using the city logo, which we were surprised to find how old that logo actually was. but also it brought us to reflect upon the structural considerations of having a big marquee spanning across Ramona Boulevard. It's a 85-foot to 90-foot span, so that's a pretty massive structure if you want to span it with a truss. And looking at these signs, we were really questioning what is an appropriate way of creating a marquee, and started to think about suspension systems. And there's several advantages to that. It allows a more intricate, more delicate structure that really frees up funds rather than spending it on some massive truss that is like a 6-foot-high steel structure. It frees that up to do something that is more about the quality of the city and about the contents that we want to tell in this sign. So we decided to go with this idea of a suspension structure, and I think we've presented a project to you before that we have taken into consideration. Your input have modified since that first time you've seen it. We also, in addition, are showing 2 other concepts that are playing with similar topics, but visualizing it in a different way.
Thank you. Gene, that kind of reminded me of the one you had in my office with the car wheels at the...
So this is just a short reminder of what Helen already talked about, that we had the community outreach and what we that we were sitting together or meeting in the park or we're in the school, and that we had these specific questions. And we actually thought we wanted to really share that outreach with you. I had mentioned it already at the last meeting, but now in front of you is actually, you can take that home and can read a little bit through that, what we found, because I think that was also really great for us to hear that a lot of people had a very positive view on the city itself, and were really engaged in how much the city offers to them. The people who came to the movies in the park, especially, of course, they were talking about that they really use it with their family, and that they absolutely appreciate that, what the council is doing. And we work with a lot of community. We have not heard that kind of positive feedback from the community that was so loud, really. But they also, of course, talked about where they are coming from. We had these very specific questions. You see that in that material. You can, when you have time, you can read a little bit through that.
And so what we really took away from these outreach events was that the community is very alive, it's very vibrant, it's a demographically younger community, it's very, very diverse. And I think people really appreciate this colorful, diverse quality of the city. Telling stories about sharing food where maybe the language is different between one neighbor to the other, but we can still all come together and share food and support each other that way. And so we really also like this image of this fabric of a city that is supporting each other. There's many different pieces supporting each other versus, it's just one homogeneous item. So then to go into our 3 different proposals. So the first proposal is a modified version of what you've seen before. It's still playing with this idea of a papel picado rings, basically. You can see it a little bit better in this image, where there are these different suspended rings over the street. So they're suspended from the hub. The ring, the wheel, the hub is obviously the Baldwin Park logo that we are playing with. And so these rings would be aluminum cutouts that are then very much like a papel picado telling different stories. Each ring could have a different story that it references. And together they are forming this pattern across the street, applying different colors suspended.
So as you can see, we took the marquee out of the middle, and then we also took some of the wheels itself out to make it a little bit less crowded in the air in a way. And then placed it also a little bit more homogeneous over the street. And we took actually really looked at the kind of cost, in which do we really need as many as we had before. So now we went down. I think now we have instead of 9 we had before, so we have now just 6 or so.
Yeah. Now we actually removed almost half of the poles and created less suspension points to have basically to have the visual focus more on the horizontal pieces going across versus the verticals. And then also removing the digital marquee from that center, created also a lighter structure.
So, do they spin?
We are hoping to get them to spin. We did
okay. I was just curious.
yes, and I think that is actually we are working on that with our fabricator. So that was also our first question to them. That's it's our goal that we could, not fast, obviously, but to just have them very slightly rotate.
So will that be lit up in different colors? Is that what it is?
So I think there will definitely be light involved. All of that needs to, obviously this is a conceptual proposal still, so it needs to be worked on some more. We definitely want to bring in light. The rings themselves, especially if they're going to be able to rotate, won't have lighting elements within themselves, but they can be lit from the sides. The City of Baldwin Park font potentially could actually incorporate lighting in itself, so that that lights up at night either as a reflector type of lighting, so it will light up as the car light hits it, or as like an actual lighting component.
I think more like a light component.
So this is like, as we had it before, a little bit more like how that you can see that it's really like a wheel. So we started the model, and that it was really based on like the logo of the city. And I think the main component for us is really to bring the stories in, to make the reach out to the different neighborhoods, to bring everybody together to downtown, is like finding these stories from everybody and then translating them into the papel picado in each of the wheels, to show really the diversity and identity of the people, of the community, to represent that much more than just the name of the city itself hanging over the street.
So that would really be a kind of exciting part for us in developing the artwork further, is actually to work with the community to find what are these interesting stories. I mean, we've done some research. We've come across also through the community outreach across some interesting stories that are represented here, but obviously there could be a whole host of different stories, and that we then would have to pare down and work with the community to select what are the most interesting ones. Also, as we are creating the papel picado type graphic, it will have to be simplified and something that translates also in the scale. You're far enough away. It needs to be something fairly simple and iconic in the end.
And it's also meant so that when you come back, that you see something different all the time a little bit, even though they look alike and they have all these things, but it might be something that you see a detail at a later point or you had never seen before.
So for the second concept, we are trying to do something that is a little bit more of a traditional interpretation of just this like simple element of a marquee, a name running across the street. And we played again with the logo of Baldwin Park, but in a more traditional sense of really just using that shape and creating this sequence of like maybe 10-inch round circles that then would create kind of this fabric vertical element underneath the band that runs across the street, showing the name, so you can see it a little bit here, also in a close-up. And we could, still explore these little elements something that also could spin potentially in the wind, or
so we made a little mock-up like this, like something that you can see it can spin by itself if it wants to.
But they would be larger than this, so this is a scaled down version.
That'd be interesting.
So the third one is goes more back to the idea of that the city is that a fabric of people, but bonds together, and it comes out of these different kinds of pieces. They made, like as humans, we are alike, but at the same time all different. So the idea here is that it's a very simple geometric thing that is where you can span a fabric between different kinds of steel ropes in a way, and or can give the illusion of a fabric. That's more or less what it does. It's still like that you have straight lines of these slopes.
So it becomes basically a three-dimensional kind of curved surface, a hyperbolic paraboloid, but it is all created just from straight elements.
That was interesting.
And so what we thought is really also going back to the public participation, that these little elements, what you see on the right side in there, that we could say like there are different colors, but it's chosen by the community, and then we have a day or several days where community members come and they choose actually their icons, what goes onto these pieces, and people can literally say like, this is my piece there inside of it, and that's me. And of course that is just for a generation now, but in terms to come, they can always say that's my family has a piece there, or somebody has a personal story or so, that it really comes from what the city is right now and how they want to like see themselves and represented.
So yeah, I think that's actually kind of fit in terms of the three approaches. I think it's important, obviously, that this is still a conceptual design phase. In the next stage, we're hoping that you will, give direction as to which design you'd like us to follow through with. There will be more structural engineering. There's more working with the fabricator to refine cost estimates. We've had preliminary conversations with both fabricators and structural engineers. So we are hopeful that any of these proposals is realistic. But also as we are developing it further, it will become more refined, it will become more specific, also through the community outreach.
What type of material would they make? Kind of stainless steel or something? Or?
Yeah, it's like the rope itself is stainless steel, which is like half between poles, and then the pieces itself is like a metal where you have a
Now, would this also be lit, or is that something?
Like all of them can be lit. They just the lit lighting it up is just like lights in the landscape all around.
And of course, we'll make sure that it's high so In-N-Out Burger truck doesn't come right to it.
No, they are all like 16
I know, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, that is actually, we've had that conversation with John and Sam about like 16 feet over, a major road like this. Definitely, so that it's, within the guidelines for that. So I think our preference collectively has been the rings, just because it allows us to really incorporate the most specific stories, and it's maybe the most playful, but it's also, it's maybe more busy than the other versions. So anyway, so that's up for discussion.
When you say the rings, you mean
the wheels.
Yeah, the wheels.
Yes, I think the wheels are very nice because it can tell a story.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Would there be public input too with stories?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It needs that. Otherwise, I mean, we can invent some stories if you want.
No.
Yeah. I think that's always the most exciting piece for us, is actually to work with the community and to really find like what are these specific stories. And we don't want to work off stereotypes that some may be out even. And sometimes the community talking about themselves, the first thing is people talk about stereotypes, but once you start to have more conversation, there's usually really neat, very specific things come out.
That sounds good. No, Ricardo wanted some input, but we'll just hold over.
I think Sam met with him and
what's
seemed
the
okay
delay?
with this.
So he's warming up to the ring. So he was visualizing a more traditional truss type thing, but so he's warming up to it. I don't know.
I like
won't speak
the
for him,
wheels
honestly,
because they can tell a story, they can be lit, colorful, and it'll be the story of how people feel about Baldwin Park. So I really like
but
those.
so far, staff has been working on it. We're all excited about the wheels, but we wanted to bring two other options to see if the council.
But could you go back to the second option? This is the third one, right?
Yeah. They were the sequence. That's just really like a bend over the street.
So it's more plain, yes. So
There's
you
no
can see
story.
what it is.
There's no
community.
story.
It's just
Yeah.
the name.
Just colorful.
Yeah, it's
So
colorful.
when you're
They look
saying
like
the
snowflakes.
so when you say the story on those spinners, so what do we? Okay, when you're saying that, is that what they're going to be cutting out in the crack? Okay,
Yes,
I see that.
right here.
I see.
So can you go
So
to
they
the
would
previous
have, like,
slide? You
in
can
and
see
out.
one with has our
Oh, I
trains are
see.
in there.
Yeah, if you could
And
zoom
there's
in.
music since we
Yes,
like to
concerts.
have music.
I like
So
the third
the
one.
wheels can have different things on them.
Mhm.
And then when the
Specifically
light
also
shining
because
on
of
them,
the
like at
input
night,
that the community can make and
and
stream
then
and so
you
forth.
see kind of like
I do like that it's
Yeah.
very sleek and minimal
Yeah.
in comparison to this version,
Yeah.
because this still seems very busy because they're so large, right? And I know you guys would do, I think actually remove some.
We
Um,
moved them, we
yeah.
moved posts. and-
Yeah.
So which
This one still looks a little too busy for myself.
What's the third?
I do like the third one.
This is the
Which is the third?
The third is the one, the last one.
Yeah, the
The fabric,
Oh, yeah.
or what we call the fabric,
Oh,
even though they're still. And I do, appreciate that. The one thing I would just say for myself is if we could just mirror I would actually, if we can, I don't know if there's space or not, but put the city of Baldwin Park and just the font that we use, if it could just be mirrored with the rest of the font that we use in the city. Because that seems
Yeah.
to be a little-
Yeah.
This looks a little cleaner and
This, you're
Cleaner.
definitely right that this is more, kind of simpler on that level. I think, and it does give us opportunity to work with the community too. I think the other piece is in this kind of playfulness and a little bit more, it is more busy. Maybe it's also more fun on some level. It has the opportunity to tell more of the story. So I mean, I could see that. Different people will gravitate towards.
So as a
different
community,
ones.
have they taken a vote on the 3 that you showed us?
So you were the first to see
I
it.
think it would be interesting to see what the community would prefer.
For the third also, I think it is cleaner, and I like the idea of the fabric of this community. I'm not a big fan of the hub. I feel like that's so outdated, and we're just kind of perpetuating that. And I think I'd rather see something a little more current, and maybe there's a way to incorporate the third design into something a little more current too. But something a current vein, taking from like the pieces of the past or the fabric of the community, but making it current. Because I do get tired of the hub. I don't think anybody really cares about that anymore. Maybe back in the day when people were writing like their Cartwright weddings or whatever. But people don't really identify that anymore.
Yeah, no, I think for us it's more like a whimsical reaction to this hub,
Yeah.
to make it these wheels that are these, telling these stories and spinning. I don't think it's anything that's very literal, but I can also see what you're saying.
Wasn't it changed at the council chambers to the hub again? It wasn't for a while.
Yes,
It was a
yes.
little house and it was
Yes.
changed again.
And I
so-
hated that. But I want the hub. I like the hub.
Exactly, I like the hub too, and I really like the wheels, the color.
I know we were a city in motion, like that was our.
Oh yeah, that was the
Well, the
80s.
wheels turn, they're
That's
motion.
right.
Yeah,
City in motion.
Yeah, I agree that
They're moving. The wheels got us here.
it feeds to that, but I like that this is more simple. It's a more simple message, and I'm wondering, instead of having like these sections, I mean, could they be like little wheels instead of being?
Definitely, there can be a iteration of what is really inside of these kind of rectangles that we have there.
Yeah, because maybe it's more like a horizontal wheel. I don't know. I agree that it's like less is more sometimes. But if having that motion and having the wheel, then maybe.
One item.
Maybe we should get the
consideration
community input.
is to put the on the posts on the outside. You can use like a cylinder cone, a cylinder silhouette, and that could then also have another story. Whether it spins or not, I mean, I'll leave that up to you. But that could be there to provide another element of input and design.
I feel like the strength of this thing is actually on some degree that it's this very elegant kind of suspended structure across. So I think we have to be careful about just like adding on things. I think though that in the refinement of what this is, of like what are these plays, how are these plays connected, are they round, are they square, what are the images, the icons. I think we could do a lot of work really to work with the community to bring out, making those images something meaningful and nice. So I think that's really where the potential of that project will lie. But I also really like the idea of actually maybe presenting not even all 3, but presenting these two options to the community, if that's what you're.
I think that would be a great idea. I mean, we all have different ideas, and then the community can pick from the 2.
Well, they can provide input. I don't know if we want them to pick necessarily, but they can certainly provide input, and then it can come back to the council.
Well, it is important. It's the community, so I think we should.
And then the posts are cleaner here on this design too.
Yeah, we need less because with the other one, we need more suspension points. With this one, we don't need as many suspension points.
Yeah. Yeah, because it adds color, it's vibrant, it has meaning, but it's not distracting. It's not overly distracting for me.
So it sounds like take the 1 and the 3 back into the community and then see what they like and get their input.
They're not liking those. The mayor is like in the middle.
Yeah.
So we can just choose or give us input on how we feel.
Okay.
You like number 1,
Well, number 1 is that the
When you go back to the first
the spinning wheels.
well, I kind of I don't know.
Okay, let's have a look.
I know. I mean, I see the perspective. Well, let's bring it back when Ricardo's around too.
So we'll get the community input on 1 and 3 and then bring it back and hopefully Ricardo will be here then. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Beautiful.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work.
It's fun. Yeah.
Thank you.
It is a lot of fun.
All right. So at this point, the next presentation. Nope. Oh, okay. Sorry, Johnny, I missed them.
And if we could do B and C first, Mayor, we have our real estate broker.
You know what?